Welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of February 16th, 2015. On this episode, we will be talking about Genealogy Roadshow Season 2, Episode 6, Returning to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Hi, I'm Shannon Combs-Bennett, Creative Director with the In-Depth Genealogist. Joining me this afternoon are Jennifer Alford, Publisher, and Terry O'Connell, Executive Director. Unfortunately, Jennifer's having a little bit of technical difficulties, so we're just going to see her lovely picture. Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
How are you all today on this snowy day in most places?
It's a heat wave here in Chicago with 21.
Woohoo!
We're talking about getting swimsuits out.
Oh, you're brave. Yeah, we've got about 6 inches of snow here, and I am not planning on going anywhere.
Yeah, we had snow and ice this week, and it is currently snowing again. So I'm ready for spring. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, me too.
Well, in this week's episode of Genealogy Roadshow, we went to the Historic Society of Pennsylvania. And as always, this is your spoiler alert. If you have not watched the show, you might want to stop this one now because we're going to be talking about all sorts of stuff in it. So you've been warned. So once again, we've asked before. We've been to Philadelphia before in this season. We were at the Franklin Institute. This time we're at the Historical Society. Have either of you been there?
Outside the building, if it counts.
Outside the building. That kind of counts. Jen, how about you?
That's one step closer than I was. I've been to Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell, but that was 15 years ago, so I really don't remember much of that time.
Yeah, we spent the hubs and the kids and I spent Thanksgiving in Philadelphia.
Oh wow.
4 or 5 years ago. It was before my youngest was even in kindergarten. And we went to the museum, and then we went to the Liberty Bell and did the Constitution Hall and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool. The way home, we went through Valley Forge because, you know, it's on the way home to Virginia, right?
Sure.
Makes sense.
I'll take your word for it.
That's right. But I have to say, the Historical Society of Pennsylvania looked really interesting. And I do have some Pennsylvania ancestors. I know nothing about them. That is one area that I am lacking in research. So maybe I'll need to take a road trip, right?
Sure. Let me know. I'll meet you because I know nothing of my Pennsylvania people.
My Pennsylvania people landed and left. That's about it. Okay, so why don't we move along to the to actually talking about the show? And as always, it was a packed episode. What I thought was interesting is there were only 8 stories and only 2 of the little bitty short episodes this time.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, and I didn't, unless I completely missed it, there wasn't a field trip. I kind of felt gypped. I wanted a cool field trip. Did I miss it?
No, I don't think there was one.
No.
Oh, well, now I really am disappointed. I was getting used to that.
Yeah, maybe they'll make it up in the last episode.
Oh, no, this was the last episode, wasn't it?
This was the last. Oh, I'm sad.
Yeah, there's only 6. 2 from each of the 3 locations.
Yeah.
Oh, see, here I was thinking more. I'm sad now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have a 2-week break between this and Who Do You Think You Are? So we're going to be going through a genealogy TV withdrawal.
I think what I'll have to do is go on YouTube and start watching some of the British Who Do You Think You Are episodes because there's a lot that I've missed.
Yes, years. And those are really good. Yeah.
But not only that, there's some from Africa.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Australia, I think, has its own series.
Australia has its own series. Canada had a short-run series. You could also try to find, did you know that this series, Genealogy Roadshow, is actually based on an Irish show on IRT? I think that's the name. Yeah, it's
RTE, isn't it?
Yeah, IRT. It's the Irish television channel, and it's Genealogy Roadshow over there, and they have 3 professional genealogists.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it the same. This is what this one is based off of. So if you can find those on YouTube, those might be something to check out too.
Hey, I did just look at the upcoming week, and there is a Genealogy Roadshow, except it's best of. So they're taking some clips of season 1 and season 2 and pulling them together.
Ooh.
So we're not lacking in TV.
It's just a
Sounds
clip
good.
show, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, talking about clip shows, Terry and I, when we were at Roots Tech FGS, we went to the Wednesday night FGS opening session, which was all about TV shows for genealogy. And of course, my notes are on the other side of the room. But so I can try to wing it, or you guys can excuse me for a minute while I hop up and go get those.
You
But
can wing it.
I can wing it. They had Cece Moore. They had Kenyatta Berry. Joshua Taylor was the moderator. Then they had George. Thank you. Who talked about Who Do You Think You Are, as well as Jennifer
Utley.
Thank you. The last names escape me on people. I'm like, I know your face and I know your first name. I feel like that's a win.
I went back and read the little clip of it in the book a few times because I didn't know George or Jennifer. So.
Right. Now, we did put out a blog post, a short little summary of what happened on the IDG website. So go check that out if you haven't already. It was a really, really good discussion. Oh, pardon me. And the other thing was we got to see two of the clips from this week's episode of Genealogy Roadshow as a teaser. We also saw clips from Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates, as well as the ending of the Zooey Deschanel episode of Who Do You Think You Are from a couple seasons ago, which if you don't remember the Zooey Deschanel episodes, you can go out to this YouTube channel and see our after the show talk about it. So that was fun. I was like, hey, I remember that episode. I talked about it. But Terry, did you have any thoughts from any perspectives about genealogy television that you wanted to share with the audience that you thought were interesting?
I thought it was great that they really sat there and told you how many hours are going into research. So it's not like it's a clip here and a clip there. They're putting at least 1,000 hours
right.
per episode. I read also one of the comments on one of our last shows, somebody was one of the shorts, and she went in and explained all the different shots that they had of her. So she said she filmed for like an hour and a half, and she was one of the shorts. So
wow.
You can see there's a lot of work being put into these shows. We're just not seeing it. I mean, obviously we know it's TV, it's getting clipped. You can sometimes tell the voices kind of shift a little bit.
Or when they have to redub later.
Right, exactly. So we have to really keep all that in mind when we get a little upset because, oh, we didn't get to see this. But, not everything is in the hands of the genealogists.
Right, and George and Jennifer also talked about that for Who Do You Think You Are, because when he was talking about the Zooey Deschanel episode, he said that there were entire segments that, when he saw the finished product, he was like, oh my God, they left that out? Like,
yeah.
Well, for instance, so I don't remember how many of you remember the story, but at the end, it was the Quaker family. There was basically the riot on their land, and they took in two of the wounded people.
Yeah.
Well, the mother nursed one of them back to health, basically. He'd been shot 15 times.
Good Lord.
And she died later, just a few months later. I want to say that happened in the spring off the top of my head. And then, that fall, she died. And they found a letter from that individual back to her family talking about how she was, a wonderful person and he owes his life to her. I mean, a very long, touching letter. And they cut that. And he's like, that really, for him, that really talked to the poignancy of it and what a wonderful person she was. So,
right.
What a shame.
Yeah. But, you're right, Terry. And they did point this out that I'm pretty sure Kenyatta said that, she's filmed for over an hour on multiple occasions. And what I did find interesting and that they all pointed out, especially the ones from Genealogy Roadshow, is that they do have writers who take all the research and create basically a
Oh.
script for them, and then they are asked to make it their own because obviously as the presenters you have to be comfortable with the words is what I'm assuming.
Right.
um, and they go through and edit it to the way they think it should read and how to make it sound like it's coming from them. So I thought that was interesting that they are given a little bit of personal license to put together the stories if they don't think the writers
Right,
Right.
exactly.
did it the way that it should have been done type of thing, right?
Right. Well, that makes
Uh,
sense.
yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Um, and of course, Cece being asked about genetics because, that just made me all ooh inside.
You're so cute.
I know. And she even commented that she's surprised when she sees the finished items, when she's been brought on to talk about DNA and everything on
Yeah.
Finding Your Roots, that she's like, hey, half that information is gone. So it
Oh,
happens to everybody. They only keep what they think is the most important in the editing room, right?
true.
So while we're talking about genealogy TV and the making of the show,
Hmm.
did you ladies happen to catch George Jeter's blog post this week in regards to one of the documents on Finding Your Roots?
I did see that.
I did not see that.
So they
That's
photoshopped the
very.
document so it was basically quicker to read. So they cut off like a couple columns, or it was like check marks or something, and moved the information over
Hmm.
so that they didn't have to basically, pan the picture, the document to see it.
And there wasn't like a little jagged line to show it had been cut?
No,
No.
no,
Oh.
you really couldn't tell until you really looked at it. You should go look for that.
Ew. Now, I'm okay with if you're doing a presentation or you're putting together something, doing that as long as you have the little like cut line so people know
Yeah.
that there is missing information.
Hmm.
But to present that to somebody who may or may not know, let's just assume they don't know, like they're not
Hmm.
researchers, mm,
Yeah.
that makes me a little
Not cool.
But I think it brings
uncomfortable.
back to what else is being edited.
Right, and you have to remember that the editors are not genealogists and they're not necessarily researchers. They're looking for good TV.
Right,
The producers, the show writers, the editors, the company, they're only going to make a show as long as it's good TV.
right. It's
Speaking
true.
of which,
So we just have to put up with it.
and go, and go do research on it, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Let me go
Right.
find
Good
that
idea.
That's right.
document.
That's right. The other thing, gosh, sorry guys, I should put my hair in a ponytail. It's driving me crazy. Um, um, I was going to say something and it escaped me. It'll come back, I'm sure. Gosh darn it. Um, but why don't we move on to the episode?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess we should.
We probably should. We can talk next week about how upset we are about stuff. So the first two stories were the two stories that we got a preview of at Roots Tech FGS at the opening
Oh.
FGS night. So I'm sorry you missed those, Jen, but at least you get to tell us the how you felt the first time you saw them.
Yes.
Since Terry and I watched them and we got to relive it a little bit and listen to it a little bit deeper. So those two stories were the woman whose grandmother bought her a car with money she inherited from a woman who she helped save during the Holocaust.
Right.
And the other one was the gang member who was the horse thief slash counterfeiter. Who wants to go first? Jen, did you want to talk about, I know you had said earlier that you had some information you wanted to talk about concerning the Holocaust
Yeah.
story. So why don't you start?
Well, so when I watched the episode, of course, I am used to reading about the Holocaust, being a Jewish person. I've heard all the stories, I've read countless books. And for me to see someone else reacting like that, it was very emotional. I found that, she was learning as she was going along, And I thought Josh did a really good job of handling that situation because she was like in tears
Mm-hmm.
at his table as he's sharing this stuff. And granted, the Holocaust was a horrible thing, and it's so tragic that so many people lost their lives.
Now,
And to be in the middle of that hall
mhm,
and experiencing that, I
Mm-hmm.
just cannot
right.
imagine how she was feeling.
Now, I want to say real quick, Josh did touch on that at the opening night, and
Yeah.
he did say that because they did not know how she was going to react, she did not see the video clip
Oh,
that we saw on TV.
yeah,
They
that's probably
actually
good.
just cut the cameras, and he
Oh,
talked to her about what the video was going to. She didn't see any of the pictures and stuff.
that's probably good.
She just got the words. And he said that they actually do that through the magic of television for a lot of the different episodes where they actually just talk them through things and not show them the actual video. So,
Well, that's probably for the best. Um,
yeah.
Even so, she was quite emotional,
Yeah.
as anyone would be if they learned that, they had family that had died in the Holocaust. But I really wanted to share some great resources that are out there if you do suspect that you have family that may have been involved in the Holocaust, whether they're a victim or a survivor. The United States Holocaust Museum has a great website and actually has search engines that you can use to try and find family. Obviously, you need to kind of know what region of Europe they were in, to try and narrow it down as to who might be related to you. But they have. I don't know if any of you have ever been to the museum,
Hmm.
but I went the year that they opened, and by the end of it, you're just emotionally drained. It's a lot to take in, but um, the top floor of the museum is actually a library, and they have people there that can help step you through researching. They can get a hold of a lot of interesting information about your family, whether they
Wow.
lived or died. So, check that out. If you're going to go to the museum, you definitely want to look online first and get in touch with them because they can pull stuff ahead of time so that you can find out more.
Yeah. They actually the library is now by appointment, so you have to call
Right,
ahead.
right.
There's a small section that you can walk in and like look at
Yeah.
like the books and stuff, but if you want to do research there, it's highly suggested that you call ahead and make an appointment, and they will actually try to start pulling stuff for you if they have
Oh,
any.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
just down the road.
I'm telling you, I'm coming to visit.
I got a couch. You can come visit.
Maybe once the weather's nicer.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, Jen, I'll pick you up on the way.
That sounds great. Road trip.
that's right. Not
I
very
will
far.
say, watching it in the hall with everybody, I don't really think there was a dry eye in the house.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
because I turned and looked just to see all these people just kind of wiping their eyes. It was very, very emotionally charged segment. And even watching it in a big public forum like that, it just was so just heartbreaking to have to listen to everything.
Right. And I also want to say that, before that, because they did the clips of the previous shows like the Finding Your Roots and the Who
Mhm.
Do You Think You Are, and people were chit-chatting and talking and stuff because we've seen them, right? They're
Right.
getting up, getting drinks, getting food, blah, blah, blah. And then when Genealogy Roadshow started, and when that one, I mean, you could have heard a pin drop.
Yes.
It just like people were glued to the screen. And I don't think it was so much that it was a new show, it was
The
the
subject.
subject matter of it. Yeah. Just was really, really gut wrenching at points. Yeah.
I want to say at one
Right.
point, the lady next to me asked a question, and I won't call out names, but she like had bent over and like was whispering something, and the ladies in front of her like turned around and was like, "Shh." So it really was a,
Obviously,
very
it really
emotionally
grew.
charged. You didn't
Yeah.
really want anything interrupting that story.
Right.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
I agree, Josh did a wonderful job handling it
Mhm.
and in making the comment. Sometimes we find things in our past that aren't happy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yep.
But while we find documents and we find things that reflect horrific moments, right? Just horrific moments in history and time, we can't forget about them. My boys watched Genealogy Roadshow with me and Who Do You Think You Are? Not when they're live because it's, past bedtime and stuff, but in the following week. And there are times when people look at me like, why would you show them something like that? And I'm like, you know what? They love history and they need to know. And I'd watched it first. Okay, I'd watched it twice by that time. And I don't believe in sheltering even our children from the past.
My question would be, why wouldn't you show it to them?
Right. Well, there are some people who think that kids should be coddled and kids should be wrapped in bubble wrapped and they should have happy childhoods. And I guess this is a product of my upbringing. My parents didn't believe in babysitters. They took me everywhere, showed me everything. I went to things that probably were horribly inappropriate for a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old. But it gave me, when I became an adult, a wider worldview.
Yeah.
I was able to understand and process. And if you don't expose your kids to the horrificness of history, you're going to find about it later. And for me, I want to be the one who says, this is what happened. Sure, watch this. Do we need to pause it? Ask me a question. Because that way they have the education they need and they're not going to be dissuaded from it in the future.
Right.
I agree wholeheartedly.
But hey, what other clips from this season, well, not from this season, but this episode, did you all enjoy? Because I have a list. We could go through the list. But Terry, did you have another one?
With the mining story in Ohio, only because I have family that was in that area. So that was really kind of like, that kind of gives me a little bit of history to it. And I have to really go back and spend time looking at my people, seeing how close they were, and if there's any kind of connections to it as well.
Right, and it's not very far from where you live, Jen, is it?
No, it's about a 2.5-hour drive, but it's a really beautiful area, and there's a state park, Hocking Hills State Park, that I go to quite frequently. And to hear this story, it just kind of opened my eyes. I don't usually think of that area as a coal mining area.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, it's in the hills. What else are they going to do? But it was interesting. Of course, you have to Google it and find out more.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so to show you what a geek I am, they said the area, and I looked at my husband, I'm like, isn't that where, like, the longest burning coal fire is? I swear to God, I have the most useless information in my head.
Well, it's cool that you knew that because I come from a long line of miners. I had no clue. And they were miners in that area, so.
Right. I had never heard of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. See, I think I had one miner in my family. It was a very, very long time ago. But most of my family are farmers. Those of you who followed me on various social media networks and blogs know that I'm originally from southern Indiana, and we were all farmers, right? Very few shopkeepers are
not a lot left to do in Indiana.
Yeah. But growing up, coal mining, strip mining was huge. And it still is in southern Indiana, where you just come in and you like take the top off the hill and big pits and strip mine. Right. And, I remember growing up, I left Indiana at 8, but, being in my grandmother's house and when they would start blasting and, the walls of the house shaking and putting cracks in the glass. And so, yeah, mining has changed and had been an interesting one of those things that I've been interested in, mostly because I was exposed to it from, an early age. And it was just fascinating to watch the guys, come out of the mines and, you'd see them in the stores all covered in black and little eyes and that's it.
Well, my grandfather was a miner in West Virginia, and they moved to Chicago basically because he was accident prone.
Ah,
And his mine boss pretty much told him he needed to get out of the mines or he was going to die there.
yeah.
Sure.
So, but I mean, both his family and my grandmother's family, they were all miners. I mean, many generations of miners. So it was really huge in my family.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I have to say the union aspect of it was interesting because right around that time was when a lot of the big union movements were happening in the U.S. So to see the almost firsthand accounts from people on the way they were treated, the pay cuts, the how they were retaliated against for organizing, that was really, some of the big times for the union movements in the U.S. and which now have the work laws, I guess you could say, were from that and the factories, in New England.
Well, it's sad because if you sit and you look back, like the stories I get from my family, like my grandma and that. So in West Virginia, you basically lived in the coal camp. You got paid script. You could shop at the company store. So they paid you with their money. You shopped with their money. And my question was, well, what did you do? Because they moved a few times trying to get away from the coal mines. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, you traded in for cash, but it wasn't even. It was like cut in half or something like that. So your $50 is 25. I mean, I don't know if that's the right ratio, but she's like, it was like nothing.
Yeah.
So it is sad to see all of that. And now, like, if you read, I think coal mining is a very well-paid job.
Oh yeah. Oh
Back
yeah.
in the day, I mean, they were dirt poor.
Right.
So,
No, it's they get hazard pay, they get time and a half overtime or more. It's, you can if you're willing to go and put your life on the line, basically, you can
mhm.
make a pretty penny now as a coal miner. Hmm.
In Raleigh County, West Virginia, they have an old coal mine that has basically been turned almost into a museum. They put you in a coal cart and take you through it
Hmm.
so that you can see the conditions that they were working in. It's very, very cool to do, but it was like so eye-opening as to, oh my God, I can't believe people did this.
Right. Woohoo, coal mining.
I don't have any that I know
Yeah.
of.
Well, like I said, I only had that one that I know of, and the rest of my experience in coal mining is just growing up, watching the coal buckets drive by and hearing the blasting and everything being black and sooty and but it's still that way in some parts of southern Indiana
Hmm.
because they're still mining.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't think people think about that in Indiana. They think of, West Virginia
Right.
Mhm.
or
That's usually what I
parts
think of.
or parts of Kentucky maybe or
Mhm.
but yeah, no, there's coal
Hmm.
mines in many states. So, yep.
Interesting.
So I liked the story because I chuckled and giggled and thought Terry would find it funny. I was thinking of you the whole time. Of the missing grandfather.
Oh yeah.
You and your lost sheep. Um,
You know.
but it's once again a case of, it was really easy. And that was this century. So we can't even say it was, over 100 years ago in the 1800s. It was really easy to just pick up, move, and disappear.
Yeah.
This happened in what, 1929? And from what I gathered, he wasn't really that far. But I think the reason I liked it because there was obviously a lot of family stories left out, and those kids are like, what aren't they telling us? You know,
Yeah.
why did he just leave? And I want to know why the woman would pick her youngest child's birthday as the date of her husband's death.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
kind of weird. Well, when Mary brought it up on the screen, my husband looked at me and he goes, "Well, he could have been at a bar, got drunk, walked in front of a truck." It's like,
True.
oh my God.
He gets an A for effort for thinking about it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's possible he could have been celebrating, could have, fell off a barge, fell off but yeah. Um, but I found that one interesting, especially because either they didn't show or they didn't find a lot of documents for the intervening years, but they found his obituary in the newspaper.
Right.
So that was
Right.
interesting. So Jen, did you have another story that you liked?
Um, well, it was just a short little segment. It was the guy who thought he was related to Anton Chekhov. And I found it amusing because even though they proved that he was not, he said, well, I'm
I
going to
know.
go on believing it anyway.
I
And
know.
and as professional genealogists, I can't speak for everyone, but there are always people who are going to be like, well, you may have proved it, but I still don't believe it. I want to
Uh,
go on believing this.
yes, entirely. Some in my family even. The other day, I actually, I gave up ever. Well, maybe someday I'll get to Rochester to look for my husband's family, but I actually paid somebody to go and copy some records for me, and I got the 90-page probate record from my husband's third great grandmother.
Hmm.
And in it is tons of information that I don't think that the researcher who's 93 that my mother-in-law has been corresponding with, I'm not sure she's actually seen this because there's a lot of contradictory information in it that this woman has been spouting to the family for, 40 years.
Hmm.
Oh dear.
And I wrote to my mother-in-law and I said, okay, so here's the record. You can read it yourself. Here's the synopsis of it. Are
Hmm.
you going to tell her or am I? And she's like, no, we're just going to, when she goes, we'll correct it. I'm like, okay. I know you dropped out,
Uh,
Terry. We were talking about the Anton Chekhov story where the guy's
Oh,
like,
that was a good one too,
I'm gonna
right?
keep believing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it's funny. I have a line that supposedly goes back to President Harrison's,
Mhm.
mm,
and I emailed the Harrison home in Indiana and gave them the information. And like, do you have anything? And they replied, they're like, yeah, no. So, and then it came from a newspaper article from the 60s, and I replied to it on the Ancestry Tree, and I'm like, hey, just so you know, I've contacted the Harrison home. They don't have any connection, so. But
yeah.
That's
let's
funny.
believe, we'll believe. I've got presidential lines.
Right. Right. And that's all I'm gonna say.
I have another one that they swear goes back to the Mayflower, but it's the same thing. There's a 20-year gap, but people are going to believe what they're going to believe.
Right, because people love their stories.
Right.
And a lot of family, this same woman that I was talking about with my mother-in-law, um, this is one side of the family, and then for like a paternal line, and then on the maternal line that she's researching, they came from Wales. And while I was at the Family History Library at Roots Tech, actually found a lot of information on this family through Welsh parish records, and they came from Somerset, so through Somerset parish records, and I found other things, and I actually broke down a very large brick wall on this line once I realized that the woman was illegitimate. And,
Yes, I hate
and
you for it.
I think I squeed. Um, but I wrote to my mother-in-law. I called her. I talked to her, and she wrote to this woman and said, because I said, hey, can you find out if she has documents? Because she went to Somerset. She went to those
Wow.
churches and like took pictures and like went through the actual records, not just a microfilm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I said, I'd love to know if she'd be willing to tell me what she found. I'll go find the records myself if she doesn't want to share, but I just want to make sure like our research is matching up. And the
Hmm.
woman wrote to her back and said, oh, I don't have documents. I just like the fun of it, and I just wrote down any name I found, and it was just
Oh
so
dear.
much fun. And I got all the way back to the 1200s, and I'm like,
Oh.
oh no, oh no. And I'm like, okay. But she has her story, and it's what she wants to believe, and I'm not going to take that away from a little old woman. So
Well,
I'm
she
not
wants
that
me
mean.
Be mean.
to.
I have to say the other story that I really, really liked, only because there's a family story of a privateer. It was the
Wow.
privateer episode.
It was cool.
Yeah,
Well,
I
at
thought
first,
it was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it was. pirates and privateers, okay, come on, they're practically the same thing. One's just, sanctioned by the government. But
Right.
um, I just found it cool. That was so much historical information, and I really thought they did a good job of, okay, because my kids really loved it. The cannons firing back and forth in 30 minutes, and oh yeah, she really got into it, didn't she?
It was good.
It
Yeah.
was really good, and it was a lot of information, and I thought it was really, really good. It was just a fun one, a really
Yeah.
fun little piece to talk about how he was, a captain for the United States Navy, and he was a privateer, and he had this ship, and so yeah.
And how he
Yeah.
wasn't very good on the ship.
Yes,
That
yes.
cranked me up.
um, so the funny story is that one of the other reasons I liked it is my husband, his third great grandfather, died on a voyage from Havana to Maine, died at sea, yellow fever.
Oh.
But I found an obituary for him from the local Maine newspaper. Oh, excuse me. And it said in it, he was an upstanding man, not a pirate. And so my husband periodically during the show, he'd go, but he wasn't a pirate.
Awesome.
Yeah. So do you guys have sailors or privateers or pirates in your family? I can't remember if I've asked you this before on the other pirate episodes. All landlubbers, huh?
No, I have a lot of sailors in my family.
Oh.
My Morse family, when they first came to America, they settled in Maine, and they were pretty much all sailors. And even after they left Maine, they went to Michigan and were there on Michigan. And even to this day, my great uncle, um, he still, whenever he gets the chance, he's got to go out there and he goes fishing and tooling around and catches all kinds of perch for us. Oh, it's
Oh,
so fun.
wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, I've found a lot of interesting newspaper articles and stuff about with tales of all the ships and when they came into harbor and neat stuff.
I have to say, for people who do have ancestors who were ship captains or on vessels, having those departure and arrival columns in newspapers is a
Yeah.
really good resource, especially if they don't ever arrive. I mean,
Sure.
sometimes that could be a good clue to, a disaster at sea, especially if you can't find a newspaper article on whatever happened to that ship, if they
Right.
just fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I did actually have uh, one of my uncle's brothers.
Hmm.
Uh, he died in an accident on a large ship on, I think it was Lake Superior, and the ship pretty much, there was a fire on board and they all had to bail. And my uncle gave his life jacket to another young man who had a family.
Oh.
So, of course, my great uncle Arthur ended up dying,
Hmm.
and there were all these newspaper clippings about it. And apparently, um, my family tried to sue the ship company for negligence or something like that because there weren't enough life jackets for everyone. And I don't know that they actually got any money, but it was kind of interesting to read all the newspaper clippings about it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it was.
Have you tried his probate records?
I have not, um, but that's certainly something I may look for.
Or even court records, because if it went to
Yeah,
court, you
yeah, and
could
the
even find
interesting thing
petitions.
is, the court thing was held here in Ohio,
Hmm.
even though he lived in Michigan City, Indiana. So I don't know what the story was there. I'm guessing that's where the company was based out of, was Cleveland.
Right.
So yeah, at some point I need to find out more about that. But that whole segment of the family, they all had some kind of horrible tragedy happen to them. I have an uncle who he worked at a racetrack and was working on a car, and a tire flew off and killed him.
Oh
Oh
my
my
word.
God.
Yeah, I mean, it's like all kinds of crazy shit. So, yeah. So it's an interesting line of my family, and it never fails to provide interesting newspaper clippings.
Family is just interesting. Let's just put that out there.
No doubt.
Well, before we close for this afternoon, Terry, did you have one that was particularly that we haven't covered yet that you want to make sure we touch on?
No, I think that coal mining one was really that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah, there was. I think the other stories that we didn't discuss, which because we're running out of time, there was the counterfeiter ring, which was pretty fascinating because they were able to document that he did go to jail and everything through court records and a newspaper have the entire
Right.
description of how he was arrested with the leader of the gang.
Right.
So yeah, oops.
Well, I liked it that, the family all this time had thought he was like,
Robin
stealing from
Hood.
the rich. Yes, Robin Hood, and then they found this out, but they at least turned it so that they showed that he had learned his lesson.
Right. Now that story was a learning lesson for my children because they all, both of them, caught in the newspaper article that the
Mhm.
guy who was the undercover agent, because they didn't say, they just said undercover agent or undercover detective or whatever it was,
Right.
they read, hey, he's a member of the Secret Service.
Oh.
So we had to discuss, Secret Service. Yes, they are in charge of counterfeit also, not just,
Right.
guarding the president. So that was a good
Definitely.
learning lesson there. And then
Interesting.
the other there was a short about the woman wanting to know if the I listened to it a couple times and I still think I don't really understand what the total question was, but I think she was asking if the mother listed on her birth certificate was her biological mother.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And through DNA testing they were able to prove that it was. So that's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
didn't quite get the story there.
yeah, I
Not sure.
felt I watched it like 3 or 4 times and I'm like I still don't understand what's going on. And maybe I just hadn't had enough coffee. So
Or maybe it was just cut to what they thought was good.
yeah, and I was like, I'm missing something, and I don't think my brain's going to wrap around it right now. And then the last story that we didn't really cover in depth, but I thought was fascinating, was the woman who wanted to verify if she was the descendant of a slave owner, because her ancestor had a very, very large tract of land from that he had purchased from this man. So I thought that was interesting
That was a
using
good one too.
right
Yeah, that was a good one.
following through census land records and other documents, and then of course a DNA test to finally prove it because the records didn't prove one way or the other.
Right. It was just
So
kind of speculation.
right,
Right.
and um, I always I find those interesting because secretly I want to know how many people they had to ask until they got someone to say yes.
Yeah. Well,
That's a good question.
you could tell that she was surprised that the people agreed to be tested.
Well, because there are some people who just won't
Oh, yeah.
for dozen different reasons. And then there are the people who are like, sure, because they're just as curious as you are. And those are the ones you have to find. And hopefully it doesn't
Yeah.
take too many to find the curious ones, right?
Right.
Not like decades, like the Hemmings.
Exactly, exactly. Well, since we've gone over our 30 minutes today, ladies, um, do you guys have any last thoughts about the episode or the season in general, since this is the last episode? Jen, how about you first?
You always put me on the spot.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Um, no, I think this season was really good. I've seen a number of people say, they didn't really connect with it last season,
Hmm.
and that now they are, and they think that, it's been a big improvement. And I have to agree. Um, Last season was okay, but this one, there were a lot of really great stories that I connected with.
Hmm.
And so I'm very much looking forward to the next season. which I
But
saw they have a call out now for people who have stories that might be of interest.
yes, and it's a nationwide call. So it's not like this season where they ask for people in specific geographical areas. If anybody wants to put in a story, and they're also suggesting that you contact your local PBS station and let them know that you want Genealogy Roadshow to come to your area.
Oh,
Please, 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 please.
Absolutely. Well, I've already put in one story. I got a couple more I'm going to put in.
cool.
I'm thinking still. I go back and forth with, is it fair for me to put it in? I could theoretically do the research myself, but it would be fun to be on the show. But should I put it in and convince my in-laws to go on or my parents? But I could do it. No, 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 no. I should totally put this in and not think about it.
Well, for me, I'm putting in like things that I just are above my head.
Yeah.
Or I can't get to where I need to go to do the research.
Right.
So.
Yeah, right there with you on that one, especially overseas. Can you just get me across the pond, please? Please just tell me where I need to go.
There you go.
Okay, well, ladies, thank you for joining me today. Everyone at home, thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to us ramble on and talk amongst ourselves about all of the things that we find interesting about genealogy. Remember, we would love to hear more from you. Please drop us a line in the comment section below. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, or send us an email at editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. So on that note, I hope you have a great day, and remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye.